so the previous week
Yeah.
planning on having
So, okay. Probably at the end.
Right. There's 6 weeks of notes. But they choose it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Folks, thanks for coming to today's Brownbag. My name is Bart Rutherford. I'm the Assistant Director for the Center for Russian, East European, and Eurasian Studies. We're getting down close to the end of the semester, so and we have Thanksgiving break, so I don't have any announcements about other things going on. But I do want to remind you that we're getting close to our holiday parties. So if you've been coming to these each week, or you're a friend of Greece, we invite you to come and celebrate the holidays with us. That is going to be on stop day, so I'll be talking more about it as we get closer. Our speaker today is Daria Milakhina, who is a PhD candidate in economics, also a graduate research assistant in the Institute for Policy and Social Research. She's a graduate of the Higher School of Economics, and I was really excited when I met her and we talked a little bit about our research interests, because we don't have a lot of economists who are able to come in and talk to us about our area. And if you look at some of the areas that she's researched, they include, the topic of today, which is subjective well-being, but she's also done research or similar research on this maternity capital program that was implemented in Russia, and trying to look at how effective that's been. And so I'm really excited to have her here, and I hope that she'll be able to answer some of our questions about corruption and its relationship to well-being.
Thank you, Barry. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming and joining this presentation. So, as you can figure out, today we're going to be talking about working in corrupt environments in Russia and its influence on subjective well-being. I wanted to start with some funny picture about Russia or something, but these days I realize I don't find that many funny things about Russia, so we're going to talk about serious things. I want to point out that that's the first paper that links working in the environment with high level of corruption and individual level of subjective well-being. This paper also assesses the anti-corruption program that was implemented in Russia in 2008. Most of the research that links corruption and subjective well-being has been done on the country level, and this is a paper that does that on individual level data. I want to first talk a little bit about what is subjective well-being, how it is related to corruption, and then why I picked Russia besides me being Russian. So subjective well-being usually refers to such things as life satisfaction or happiness. It's a new topic in economics, rather new topic in economics, and very controversial. There are lots of economists who say, hey, you have subjective in the name of the subjective well-being. That's not what we want to do. We want facts, numbers. But there are other economists and well-respected economists who are very interested in this topic, or at least mention it in their research. So, very controversial topic, but it doesn't make it less interesting. Subjective well-being, why a lot of economists are interested in that is because it helps us to understand people's behavior, which often is not consistent with the classical economics theories. And in economics terms, it is a good estimation of utility function, which basically means that it helps to reveal people preferences and their behavior based on these preferences. So we can estimate what is better for, the country, higher inflation or higher unemployment, because those things are trade-off. And based on the subjective well-being data, we can at least see what makes life satisfaction of the people of the country better and make a choice. And there are a lot of things that could be done with this topic. I want to talk about some general findings that you can find in research that use individual level of subjective well-being. First, economics, so we start with income. Higher income means higher subjective well-being. Money does buy happiness. It's not exactly true for the country level data, so if you compare GDPs and average subjective well-being in the countries, there is such thing as a Australian paradox that says that it doesn't depend on each other, so countries with higher GDP doesn't really have higher average subjective well-being, but at least on the individual level, this is true. Marriage improves subjective well-being so being married makes you more happy compared to not being married or being divorced. Subjective well-being is U-shaped during life. It decreases until the age of about 35 years old, but then it starts increasing again. More years of education increases your subjective well-being, but until grad school. Going to grad school doesn't really make you more or less happy. Health has one of the biggest effects of subjective well-being, which is very intuitive. If you have poor health, you're not feeling as happy or satisfied with your life. And recent research shows that men now are more happy than women. It hasn't been like that before, but now this is how it is. Talking about the link of subjective well-being and corruption, as I already said, the research that has been done works with country level data. And the general idea is that the quality of formal institutions should influence subjective well-being, average level of subjective well-being in the country. If you have high quality formal institutions, which also, one of the things that weights in that factor is how corrupt or not corrupt country is. If you have higher quality of formal institutions, that would improve average level of subjective well-being. The same true for any type of efficiency of the government or openness of the governments. Also improves subjective well-being in the country. As I already said, all this research links country-level data with subjective well-being. None of them has been done on the individual level data, and one of the reasons is you can't find real data. With any illegal activities, you're not gonna come to the people and ask them, hey, are you corrupt, are you taking bribes? And they're gonna give you an honest answer. So you kind of need to work your way around to get some estimation of what is the level of corruption of a particular person or something like that. So what I do is I take one country with high level of corruption and I look at the parts of the people that are potentially corrupt and see what happens to their subjective well-being, whether it's different from the people who are not corrupt. This country, obviously, you can say from the title of the presentation, is Russia. A little bit of history of what was going on in Russia in terms of corruption. It started before, very long time ago, before 1715. Government officials in Russia were not getting official salaries. They were getting basically official bribes that was called kормlение for their services. So if you wanted a judge to solve your case, you would come to the judge, offer some money, as much as you could or as much as you found reasonable, and that would be the salary of the judge. So guess what would happen in this situation? After that, the system has changed. It was not official anymore, but because it was there for such a long time, it was basically in mentality. And then, during the Soviet Union, government officials were the ones who were deciding about the distribution of the key resources instead of the market doing that. And again, when somebody is in charge, there are ways to influence this person's decision. Then transition period came, and we started in the country. The privatization started, and again, there were a set of people who were making decisions of who would get factories or any other big, potentially with a lot of money, corporations or companies. And this all is combined with the current situation of weak legislative system in the country, and it's just the whole thing increases level of corruption in Russia. As the result, Russia is ranked as highly corrupt country by lots of indices that measure corruption. For example, Transparency International Corruption Perception Index in 2013 ranked Russia 133 out of 177 countries, where first is the cleanest country and 177 is the country with most corruption, and the score of 28 out of 100. Again, 0 is very corrupt, 100 is very clean. For comparison, United States is ranked 9th of the 177 with a score of 84. And in general, you can see that the more red or dark red the country is, the more it's corrupt. Russia is not the most corrupt country, fortunately, but it's very corrupt. And if the idea is that if I want to study something that has influence on corruption or that is influenced by corruption, I would rather pick a country that has high level of corruption to have more vivid effects. In particular, several reports, a lot of actual reports, both government, which is not always a reliable information, but in this sense it is, because independent reports state the same, that the following occupations are reported as, consistently reported as taking bribes. Those are police officers, judges, and then senior officials, top management of the corporations that are owned by the government or co-owned by the government. And that would be my part of the individuals of the country that are potentially corrupt. To study the relationship between corruption and subjective well-being, I use the panel data set, Russian longitudinal monitoring survey that was compiled by, and actually they still do that, by Higher School of Economics and University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. They has been studying, they has been following over 9,000 individuals over now almost 20 years. It started in 1986. They had 5 years of service, which they were practicing. And the data is not as good, but after that they got much better, and you get data from all these individuals followed almost every year and asked the same questions over and over again. Let's talk about estimations a little bit, really quick. You have unobserved variable, which is representation of subjective well-being of the person, how the person is satisfied with the life in general. So how do you feel about your life? And there are some factors that influence that, including one that I'm particularly interested if the person is in that corrupt occupation that I said before. But I also want to control, to take care of other factors that may influence subjective well-being, so I'm not going to have the fact built in this person being corrupt in the occupation. So I have a dummy variable that is 1 if person is working in the corrupt occupation and 0 if it's not. And also I have a vector of explanatory variables, which would consist of income, age, all the things that I said before that are found to influence subjective well-being. And also I would have some individual fixed effects controlled for. The reason for that is some research argues that subjective well-being is not the best to compare between individuals. If you, in the same situation, some person might say that he is very happy, and another person feeling the same would say that he is somewhat happy. So it's better to compare kind of individuals' change of their understanding of subjective well-being over time, so that takes care of that. And well, the error term is following logistic distribution that just defines the method of estimation. As I said, the y, the dependent variable, is unobserved. You can't really measure every single time how person feels about his life, but you can ask. And in surveys, what they do, they ask questions something like, how happy are you in life? Or how satisfied you are in life? In this particular survey, the question was, to what extent are you satisfied with your life in general at the present time? And there were 5 answers that you can give. Fully satisfied, rather satisfied, both yes and no, less than satisfied, and not at all satisfied. For the estimation purposes, I combined for the main part of estimation answers fully satisfied and rather satisfied as one, so the person is satisfied with his life or her life, and all others are 0, so the person not as much satisfied with the life. And as I said before, I control for family, income, dummies for health, marital status, gender, level of education, age squared to check the U-shape, and whether the respondent has children. To estimate the effect of the program, I use difference in difference technique, and the idea is the following. I pick people who belong to the correct education, that's our treatment group, and then I look at the time of the treatment, that would be after 2007 when the policy has started, and my variable of interest would be interaction term between those two. So I just multiply them together and see if for the people who work in corrupt occupation there was any change after 2007. First, I want to show you the results without the variable that indicates that individual works in the corrupt occupation, just to show that my data follows the general paths of what influence subjective well-being, so that's reliable data, and we can control for those factors and make sure that they're not influencing our variable of interest. So this is just the part of the estimation. You could see that education variable, I have full sample women and men separately, that there are 7 categories, and right here there should be college, but those are compared to college. So for example, you could see that having a little bit less of education, like technical colleges, would decrease your subjective well-being, and those are marginal effects, so those are percentages. So your if you finished your education at technical college or any musical arts college, you would have 4.5 less probability of being satisfied with your life compared to not satisfied with your life, compared to if you had gone to college. And graduate school, no effect. For women, there is somewhat significant effect. It's 10%, so you can't really say that's significant, but at least this postgraduate Doctor of Science degree, which is in Russia, is the high level of education that takes about 15 years from after college, and a lot of research to get this degree. This is a huge accomplishment in life. So for women, that does matter. This type of career does matter, and makes at least a little bit more happy in life. Age and age squared, so that just says that the age is U-shaped, the subjective well-being is U-shaped over life as we had expected. Health variables, they're compared to, there were 5 answers possible for health. It was self-assessment, and those 4 are compared to not good, not bad. Having better health improves subjective well-being, and having poor health decreases it compared to somewhat good, somewhat bad health, which is expected. Having kids in general increases subjective well-being, but looking at men and women, the effect is for men. And for women, it doesn't make any difference. As a new mom, I can say, what? Kids are pure happiness. What are you talking about? That makes economists skeptical about this subjective well-being things. But, well, that's kind of the result that is there throughout research. Marriage variables are compared to not being married. Being married compared to not being married improves your subjective well-being. Everything else decreases it. Men are more happy than women. This is the somewhat nice to see that the level of subjective well-being of people in Russia improves over time, but I can also add that after collapse of the Soviet Union, it was very low. It was almost as never have seen before low level of subjective well-being. So it's actually people recovering from that. And income improves subjective well-being, that was expected. Now we want to add to all this the corruption variable and see what happens there. But before, let's look at just the mean and standard deviation, just looking at our data. The red line, people are mean and standard deviation of people who work in the corrupt occupations, and this is their subjective well-being. And this is subjective well-being, mean and standard deviation of subjective well-being who do not work in corrupt occupations. You could see that just from looking at this, you could see that it's higher. But again, how do you know why it is higher? It could be due to so many factors that influence subjective well-being, and maybe not just because they work in those corrupt occupations. For example, on average, they have higher income. In general, average income is not very high in Russia, and people who work for the government, they have at least the stable income, and plus top management, they would have higher income. But on the other hand, they have higher health, lower health, which would decrease their subjective well-being. So those things could balance out their subjective well-being, and it could be something else that influences their subjective well-being and drives up compared to the people not working in the corrupt occupations. So let's see, let's just see what our data shows. Here I have this is basically two different econometrics techniques, just because there is no perfect way to estimate data the way it is when you have categorical dependent variable. So I use several techniques to show that result holds no matter which one I picked. And the first one is just I clustered it on individual, I said that treat this individual as one person over time. And this is marginal effect. Working in the corrupt occupations makes subjective well-being more than 8%. Probability of having higher subjective well-being is more than 8% compared to people who do not work in the corrupt occupation. You could also see that the effect is present just for men, not for women. I can't say that is that for men working in corrupt occupation improves subjective well-being and for women doesn't. It's just this happens because about 75 to 80% who work in those occupations are men. So the rest are women, and I might not have enough data to see the effect in women. And this is conditional logic. This takes care of fixed effects that I talked before, that you compare the change of the subjective well-being over time of the certain individual, and you also see that you have positive effect. This is not marginal effect, so it's not percentage. You just look at the direction of the effect. I also ran some robustness check, because this increase of subjective well-being of somebody who works in the corrupt occupations could be due to several factors. I don't know, government officials could be just more happy in life for some reasons. The first thing that I did, I took different data set. This is the British Household Panel Survey data. In Britain, Britain is quite clear country in terms of corruption, so their government officials and people who work in the occupations that I used for Russia shouldn't be corrupt, right? So I took this data set, and they're very similar. I think the Russian was based on the Britain, and because they were doing it before. And I took the same occupations, did the same type of analysis, but just for only 1 year, dealing with data, it is enough to show that there is no effect. So if you take different country with low level of corruptions, when you do not expect those occupations to be corrupt, you don't have this effect. Another check that I did is taking government, people who work in government for state in Russia, but in occupations that are not as much corrupt as others. Those are elementary school teachers, nurses, and once I look at their effect, you don't see the positive increase in subjective well-being. So you could say that it's not the government job that drives the subjective well-being up. It has something to do with corruption. The other two are just, again, different econometrics techniques that just prove that I have the effect no matter which technique I use. So why does it happen? Honestly, I can't say looking at my data why, but I can think of some reasons why could it be. I have two in mind. First, it could be something psychological. People who work in corrupt occupations have power and they like using this power or abusing power. And especially having men in those occupations feels that it's likely that it could do something with just I get control over people or subordinates. Another, more from the point of view economics explanation, could be unreported income. When you have a survey and somebody asks you what is your family income, if you're taking bribes, you're not going to say, hey, this is my salary and this is income from bribes. Some people could, some people probably wouldn't do that. It's illegal activity, so it could be due to unreported income, but that's good, because if we assume that all this effect is unreported income, we can calculate how much income do you need to have extra to take care of the difference of subjective well-being. So at least that would be the upper bound of what would be the change of salary to take care of difference of subjective well-being. And then if you look at the main estimation effects and calculate the substitution basically effect, you would find that the reported income should be 2.7 times higher to substitute this difference of subjective well-being. Assuming that all unreported income is bribes. As I said before, it would be rather an upper bound because some would report their income from bribes, some wouldn't. But it was, there is some estimations. And it kind of makes sense if you look at the average bribes and average salaries. So average bribe in 2011 is reported, but again, some independent agencies who deal with corruptions and they try to estimate those things from 30,000 to 300,000 rubles, which would be in 2011 is about probably a little bit less than $1,000 to $10,000. And the average salary is 17.5 thousand, which is about $500 of the government official, and it kind of follows, if you multiply by 2.7, it kind of follows the path. Also, not saying that you should do that or it would take care of all the problems, but it would make think that if you increase those salaries, that would take care of at least of the parts of the problem, and the further analysis could just look at whether it would be reasonable. Would it be, for the country, would it be enough price to pay or reasonable price to pay for taking care of the problem that is a big problem of the country. The last thing I want to do is to talk a little bit, to say a few words basically about the government policy that started in 2008, where it was the massive showcase policy with taking care of corruption. There were trials and people were accused of being corrupt, and it was public and it was in the media. And it was supposed to be scary for those who are corrupt. And you could see, this is our variable of interest. So those are people who are working in corrupt occupations after the policy had started. There is no effect. First, I thought that maybe I don't have enough observations. It just started in 2007. The last year of survey I have is 2011 for the 2012 for this estimation. So maybe it's just nothing changed yet. You can see the change. Then I thought maybe people just don't believe it. I mean, a lot of things that government says we're going to make better, especially knowing that a lot of government officials are corrupt. You think really, like, it's just words for getting popularity or something. But then also, if you read recent reviews of this policy, even government and all the agencies that try to deal with corruption or try to research the situation in Russia in terms of corruption, they say this policy doesn't work. It didn't make any difference. It's even, well, not saying because of the policy, but over the years it's getting worse. Bottom line, people who are working in potentially corrupt occupations have higher subjective well-being. It could be due to excess power or something psychological, or it could be due to unreported income. If it is due to unreported income, that 2.7 increase in salaries should compensate for the difference of subjective well-being. Again, not saying that we should do that, but just something to think about. And so far, attempts of the government to fight corruption didn't make any difference in terms of how people who are working for corrupt occupations feel about themselves. So they're not more scared, they're not less scared, they're just feeling the same good as they were before. So this is my results. Thank you. I'm ready to answer your questions and discuss